Welcome to Masculinity Rising number 7. We're going to be meeting with Mr. Dan today. I was playing with my watch there. It was kind of silly. And with Mr. Dan, we're going to talk about being strong, the importance of strength, and the unexpected benefits of strength. And if this is your first time at Masculinity Rising, know that my mission is to empower men to rise to their absolute fullest potential. And my dream is to create a world where men can experience the energy, the willpower, the discipline, the connection, and all of those things so that they can live their life fully and be leaders for themselves, for their families, and for the world. And ultimately, through this movement, through Masculinity Rising, through this show, the work that I do, my goal is to improve not only the lives of men, but of women, children, and the world and society as a whole. So that is what we are here to do today. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. Backstory, Dan and I, Dan's actually probably my longest actual friend. Dan and I have known each other since 2011, and I don't think that I have any friends in my life, even my wife, which, there's debatable whether we're friends or partners or what, that I've been close to as consistently as this dude. So I love this dude. And Dan is a self-described normal dude. He's a former and current, I'll give him that, nerd, and who has hooked me up with a Spawn issue 1 original copy. I feel it in my heart. I love it. Who I would describe, and my clients have described us this way when we were going to Comic Cons together, as the hero of the nerds. You're that dude. But what Dan does is he's a coach who guides people to do things that they thought were impossible. And Dan's a trainer. He's a coach. He's a strongman athlete. He also teaches people how to snowboard, to ski. Dan is the master of many things. I don't want to say jack of all trades, master of none, because I think he's pretty good at some things here. He introduced me to Magic the Gathering, got me to go deeper into my nerd self there. But I'm going to shut it up now and just say, hey, Dan, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, you're unfortunately, or fortunately, not the only fitness junkie that I've turned on to Magic the Gathering. So,
yeah, already in the chat, Dan is the man. I can confess, Dan turned me into a nerd as well. Yeah, guys, keep this stuff coming. Keep the chat alive because it makes this so much more fun. So I want to dive straight into what you do, because I've experienced this firsthand. You've inspired me to do things that I wouldn't have thought were possible before, that I wouldn't even consider doing, and gotten even myself outside of my comfort zone, which I used to think I was pretty comfortable with it. But you coach people to do things that they thought were absolutely impossible. And we've talked about strength, but what do you think that the biggest obstacle is that people face in their lives when they come to you?
you'll ask people, right? Like, hey, what's your limiting factor? And you'll have a list. We actually used to share a list together of the biggest excuses people would give. And it was 30 things long.
30
the biggest ones were, I don't have the time, or my kids, or I'm too tired, or I don't have the money. But what I've found in the past 10 to 13 years is that more often than not, the biggest limiting factor is themselves, right? It's their mindset. It's the story they tell themselves of why they can't do something.
That's a really common theme that's come up in my life on this show here. Is we had that list. I might still have it somewhere on my clipboard. So under it, if somebody was really sandbagging it, I could pull out the list and be like, oh yeah, I've seen this one, which was kind of a dick move when I think about it. But it was the excuses list. But really, the thing is with an excuse is that it's just a story. It's a story that you're telling yourself, or you're telling other people. And these stories can go so deep. We can be like, oh, I don't have time. I don't have whatever the story is that you're telling yourself. But it is the pattern, like you said. It's themselves. they're the biggest obstacle, but it's the pattern of like, I'm going to tell myself stories. So fill us in, like, how do you work with people? What do you do? And like, how do you get into that?
Honestly, it's a lot. Some of the biggest successes I've seen is through strength training with people, variety of different things, and actually coaching snowboarding. So more often than not, when you get somebody into a situation where they're afraid, right? When you're under the bench press bar and they think it's going to staple them, you know, or just crush their chest, or when you're on a hill and you're sliding and you think you can't stop, or you doubt yourself, you doubt your own abilities to do something, that's generally where the fun starts for me, right? Is where I have to convince people to have a conversation with themselves, to talk themselves into something, and that they're more capable than they think they are. So
what is that like?
It really is situational. Depends on the situation. So for example, I've had people on like a black diamond, and if you're not familiar with skiing and snowboarding, black diamond is probably like one of the hardest hills to go down. It's like the second to third, depending on where you're from. Hardest hill to go down. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I can't do this. Being there for them as like a guide, almost being like, even if you don't believe in yourself, I believe in you. Like, at least try. Like being there to help people not fail, right? Like showing them to fail, like kind of forcing them to fail, but helping them guide through so that they're not a failure, almost shows them something that they didn't see before. I know that's kind of cryptic, but
well, you're helping them fail better. You're helping them feel better, but then also standing behind them like, listen, I've been here before. I live on this mountain, if we're talking about snowboarding, but also like with strength training, stuff like that. Like, hey, I live here. I know because I've been able to do it, that you can do it. And a lot of the times, yeah. And like, I know how to do it recklessly. I know how to do it safe. And I'm going to help you do it safe. And I was going to say, a lot of the times we can, I don't remember what I was going to say, but so when it comes to strength, I know that you've said that you feel that strength training, getting stronger, is a really good vehicle for change beyond just being strong.
Yeah, very much.
So I'm curious. I want to know more about that, because a lot of guys, a lot of women are showing up here. A lot of maybe kids, I don't know, showing up here like, hey, I want to be strong. And there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more that you can get out of it through pursuing that. So I'm curious.
So maybe like
what is that all about?
Quick backstory as much as I can. In the past, before I started strength training, I was in a really bad relationship, and the only reason I could justify that it ended was because of how I looked. I'd gained a bunch of weight, so I decided that I was gonna look better because I didn't want to be alone. So I turned to strength training. I would strength train once a week. I'd do cardio once a week, 5 to 6 times a week. Do cardio 5 to 6 times a week. But what I found for myself is that my whole mindset changed when I became a more fit person. When I became physically stronger, I became mentally stronger. Right? Stuff didn't bother me as much. Things didn't get to me. Like the stresses in life were perceivably lower just because of the trials that I put myself through in the gym, if that makes sense. So I see that a lot of times with my clients and athletes as well. I've had people with cerebral palsy or who are severely overweight, and their biggest fear is falling down and not being able to get up. I've actually had a client, he was 400 pounds originally, 420 pounds. I think when he was about 380, he told me a story and he said, oh, Dan, the other day I fell. And I was only a coach for probably like maybe a year or two at the time. And I didn't think much of it. I was like, so what? stand up. Like, you know, the classic old adage from Batman, like if you fall off the horse, what do you do to get back up? I'm sure that's from more than Batman, but whatever. Exactly.
Batman and everything else.
Of course.
But Batman's the most important one.
And he was like, "Oh, you don't understand. When I fall, I can't get up." Well, I swear, the next training session, I brought him into, we had a boxing studio that was padded floors for like wrestling and grappling. And I brought him in there and I tricked him into falling so that we could practice getting up. And this was his biggest fear. And we actually trained him from a different perspective of how he could get up. And the moment he stood up after 3 to 4 minutes of very intense effort, he looks to me and he goes, "You don't know how big this is." So that alone showed him that he can take care of himself in this very small aspect that a lot of us take for granted, like not being able to get up if you fall. And that skyrocketed his own personal like mindset of, holy crap, like I'm capable of this. I can take care of myself. I don't have to worry about, you know, something nominal like falling over being an emergency.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it relates to the previous story you were telling about coaching someone on a black diamond who's like, I don't know if I can do this. And you're like, I know you can. And like, I've been here to coach you, so I wouldn't give you something that wasn't just at your limit. I need you to steer into that fear a little bit because that's where the growth is. And then your client gets up off the floor and he's like, you don't know how big this was. I forget
the study, but I've heard about a study about it was in extreme athletes, so like skateboarders, snowboarders, whatever, bicyclists, stuff like that. And it was all about how, where in terms of if your skill is 100%, that's the top skill end, where should I practice to progress? Right? And we kind of do that with strength training too. It's like, oh, if my 1 rep max is 500 pounds on a deadlift or a squat, where should I train to exceed this? But the same thing happens in life and in the way you perceive situations, right? So like if we train, and I think it's something crazy like between 85 to 90% of effort and skill level, that's where people saw the biggest gains in abilities. And I think that pertains to a mindset as well, right? So like if we're doing a Sudoku and we're just like, you smash through them in like 60 seconds, it's like those are too easy. Like you're not failing enough. We're not pushing you to the limit. But if you fail every time, you're also not growing from that. So I try to find that place for all of my clients and athletes, whether it's like a learn to snowboard, learn to ride a bicycle, even potentially like in business, like let's get you uncomfortable and push you to where your limits are, because that's where the growth is.
Mm-hmm. Fear, false evidence appearing real. It's my favorite acronym. And applying progressive overload, not just to the gym, which if you're here listening to this and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, I understand that if I lift weight a little bit heavier, that I'm going to get stronger. That's what progressive overload is over time. But you can apply that same concept to the rest of your life, like Dan said with Sudoku or your business or snowboarding or anything. I was going to say relationships. How do you see that? How would you see that in relationships?
For example, like if you were going to like a date night with your wife or your partner or whoever, something like that, maybe that's something you do all the time and you're very comfortable with it. Like, so if we were to put a score on that of 1 to 100%, you're probably like pretty confident that this is going to go all right. But maybe like a ballroom dancing class, you're like, I don't know if this is going to go well. We've never really talked about that. But if you take that risk and just do it, even if it bombs and the two of you hate it, it probably is growing you in a relationship regardless if you hated it or if you guys loved it.
Yeah, you dipped your toe into something I think is really, really important. And I think that it's, who wrote about epigenetics? Bruce Lipton. He also wrote what's called the honeymoon effect. And I think that what that is as we are in relationship to someone for a longer period of time, you and I have been friends for a long time,
or significant other, relationship, wife, husband, whatever, you start to get comfortable. You start to get comfortable. And, progressive overload is not like, let's go out more, let's go drinking more. But it's how do I go beyond my comfort level and take on new experiences together? Because it's called, I can't think of the name of it right now, limerence phase, right. Like that absolute honeymoon effect when you first meet, like wears off after a little while. And after like 2 years, now you see the person's programs and patterns that even they're like somewhat unaware of. But to keep that intense connection, going outside of your comfort zone, practicing that progressive overload with doing new things, like you said, like I'm gonna go take a ballroom dance class. This is what we're gonna start doing together. And like I don't know how to dance, where I feel really embarrassed about myself dancing, but I'm gonna go do it. That's how you can apply progressive overload to your relationships. And I think as dudes, we get really complacent. We get really comfortable. I'm sure women do the same thing. I don't know. I'm not a woman, so I can't speak for that experience, even if I identify as one. But we get really complacent. And one of the things that is really important, bringing this progressive overload concept forward, is starting to make decisions. Like, you and your wife are going to go out. You go out every Friday. Maybe you go to the same place all the time. But my challenge is take her somewhere else. Surprise her. Take her somewhere else that she, like, don't even tell her, like, hey, where you get in the car, like, hey, I'm taking you somewhere else tonight. It's special. I'm not going to tell you where. It's little things like that, getting outside of your comfort zone, making a decision like that. This one, you might look at it and be like, that's kind of sexist, but one thing I started doing, I went through Kim Anami's men's program, which is really cool. And you think that it's Kim Anami, so it's like it's all sex stuff, but actually most of the program was like mental and emotional intimacy. And her challenge was, okay, dudes, stop being comfortable. You need to take charge. This is the same thing we're talking about when you're going down a black diamond, when you're learning to get up off the floor. You need to take responsibility, and do the uncomfortable thing. And like, hey, I'm taking you out on a date. I'm not telling you where you're going. Here's what I need you to wear. Here's the time that we're leaving. Let's go.
And I think we can practice that in the gym. I think it's so funny how, like, whether it's the gym or learning a new sport, like I was talking about snowboarding a lot, but like a lot of times men and a lot of people in general, they're super comfortable being uncomfortable in the gym, but how are we applying that to our life? Right? How do we take the lessons learned in the gym everywhere else? So.
Yeah, and you coach people to get strong AF, and it's a skill. Like as you learn to toe the line between like this hurts like shit, like my muscles are burning, this feels terrible, but I'm not hurting myself, and like pushing through that limit, getting more reps, putting more weight on the bar, whatever it is, doing a more complex agility exercise, learning how to get up off the floor that's slightly above your level. There's something that happens that makes it easier to do that in other areas of your life, in your relationship, but also at work, managing uncomfortable stressors in your life. It makes everything else easier. Anything else that's coming up for you with that?
Not really. I'm sure I could rap about that for a long time, but
I want to rewind a little bit if we can go back in time for you. So you mentioned you blasted through it, that you started working out near the tail end of a relationship, and you're like, I want to take charge of my health now. And a lot of people are in a similar situation where they're neglecting their health. They might be a little bit comfortable, and they're faced with making a change. And starting an exercise program is an example, but this could be other changes that you need to make too. But we talk a lot in yoga, we talk a lot about momentum, moving forward, and how it's easier to keep moving than to stop. And inertia, which when you're inert, like I'm sitting in this chair, it takes a lot of energy for me to change this. And when you're not working out or you're not moving forward in any life area, health, profession, finances, relationships, spiritual growth, it can be really hard to overcome the inertia. So I'm curious, like, how the heck did you get started?
My fitness and weight loss and strength journey was not about health. It was about a bad breakup that I didn't understand at the time, and I thought the only reason why we were no longer together was because I had gained weight, and it was completely aesthetic. And at first, I was really kind of embarrassed that was my story, but I'm not so much anymore. So bad breakup. I started hitting the gym because I was afraid of being alone. Fast forward, I started, seeing people and stuff like that. It quickly changed into a competition mindset. I did CrossFit for a little bit. I did a Lifetime's version of Alpha for a little bit. I competed in some like Tough Mudders and stuff like that, Spartan races. What I found was that everyone around me had started seeing results as well. The effect of me getting fit started to affect my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, and it transitioned, and my strength and fitness goals continue to transition from one thing to another. So like now it's more about health. It's more about leading through example, and it's continuing to challenge myself. But at first it was purely aesthetics because I didn't want to be single.
When did things shift for you? So you started working out, you started seeing results, and then like at some point you shifted into a different mindset. Like it was beyond aesthetic. But like what point did that happen?
It was the exact time. Like it was, like I don't remember the date. I think it was gradual, because it was always kind of like that, I forget what it's called, like a body dysmorphia kind of thing. You never think you look good enough, but over time you start kind of accepting that. At least I did, and then it would transition into like, oh, I just want to be healthier. I need to eat better. I perpetually learn as well, so the learning from people around me and podcasts and things like that kind of changed the direction. I experimented a lot with diets to see what worked for me, and then it kind of transitioned gradually from being about me to being about the clients and athletes that I was serving, and I wanted to be more knowledgeable and experience things so that I could deliver that to them and try to get them to a place where I was, or to a place that they didn't think was possible.
Yeah, you started to change, and other people noticed and started to change around you too, and it helped to have a little bit more knowledge to guide them through that. When you look back to that initial venture into improving your own health, losing weight, improving your physique, what was that experience like? And what were the like challenges that you experienced at that time? And what would you say to people going through the same thing?
So the challenges I faced were, I feel like, the same challenges everyone did. When I first started, I actually signed up with a coach as well, a personal trainer, and it was expensive. The gym I was paying for was $100 a month, and then I joined a class that was $200 a month on top of that. And at the time, I was a full-time student and only working part-time job, but I figured out a way to make it happen because it was important to me. So time, like the excuses we talked about earlier, time was something that I had to overcome. Finances were something I had to overcome. My own personal motivation, when you wake up in the morning and you're like, damn, I don't want to go do whatever, but that was all something I had to overcome with myself. In hindsight, again, I was my own factor, because we all have the same time in the day. We make time for the stuff that's important to us, and there's a lot of money in this world. We just need to figure out a way to go get it, and if you need it bad enough, you probably find it.
I'm so curious about this part, because this is something that I think that so many of us struggle with, even when we think that we're through it. And how did you how did you make that stuff happen? Like, how did you make the time? You're a full-time student, you're working part-time as well. But you were like all in on this thing, on changing your body. How did you, one, make the time happen? And two, yeah, how did you dig deep? Like, what was that process like to be like, I'm going to find this money, even though I don't know where it's going to come from?
I don't know. It was kind of just reallocation of time. Like, I didn't play any video games. I was a huge video game player. I played a lot of World of Warcraft in my past, and I swapped out my World of Warcraft membership for a gym membership. You know, reallocated fast food to cooking for myself, right? Which saved a lot of money, and inadvertently it was healthier. So I started losing weight even better. So it's just kind of looking, it's like a balance sheet, right? It's like budgeting. It's like, what do I currently have, and how can I reallocate those time, money, any resources I have towards my goals? But you have to be willing.
Yeah, really looking at.
Sorry, I said, but you have to be willing.
You there,
right? And that's where you're your own worst enemy. Are you willing to stop getting your $5 to $8 cup of coffee every day at Starbucks and making it yourself at home with a French press that costs the same price as one cup of coffee? Stuff like that.
How did you keep yourself going, assuming that you had some dark times where you're like, I don't want to keep going? I don't know. You might be the rare case that, like,
to be honest, I don't think I did. I think the most recent one was actually the past month and a half. I experienced some injuries that I have no idea that came about, and I haven't worked out until today for the past month and a half. You know, and everyone sees strength coaches and stuff like that as, oh, it's your job, but it's not. We go through the same stuff. You know, I got discouraged. I don't like using the word depressed because I think there's some people that's really dark for, but I feel like I was flirting with that as far as I wasn't bettering myself. I wasn't in the gym because I had an injury and felt like I couldn't do anything. I was out of the country for 2 weeks, and even today was my first workout back, and I didn't want to do it. I wanted to sit and watch the new episode of The Mandalorian because I'm a day behind. And but I didn't. I came out to the lab here, and I got on the treadmill and I pulled out a barbell and I did it because I think discipline is over motivation, right? Like Zig Ziglar always says that people have it backwards. Everyone says, "Oh, I'm waiting to be motivated to do X, Y, Z. Oh, I'm waiting to be motivated to ask this girl out, to ask this guy out. Oh, I'm waiting for the election cycle before I decide to buy this car because it's too bad of gas mileage, or I'm gonna wait. My favorite one, I'm gonna wait till I get a little more fit before I hire a trainer, right? But the time never comes. You know, the time never comes. So motivation does not precede the action. You do the action and then you feel motivated to do it, right? So I hit the gym today for the first time in a month and a half. I'm embarrassed to admit. But guess what? I'm now motivated to hit the gym again tomorrow, or even a second time today. It's kind of like Pringles, once you pop, the fun don't stop. So people have it backwards. It's the motivation does not precede the action. The action precedes motivation. Do the something, and then you're motivated to do it.
Yeah, it's you broke the inertia by diving into it, and now it's just like,
exactly.
Well, now I just have to keep the momentum going. Like I got the car moving, that was stalled. Now I just have to keep pushing it. My question is, though, how did you do that? Like, how did you go from inert, like you've had the month off, to oh, this is workout number 1? Like, how did you do that? What did that look like for you?
So
what did it feel like inside?
It's hard for me to describe, but it's a lot of factors. I know what I do. I know I serve, my family, my wife, my brothers and sisters. I serve my clients. I serve my friends. So a thing that you and I seem to like a lot is we can only give from a cup that's overflowing. So if I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of anyone else. And that's what I do. What I do is I take care of people and I push them to be better versions of themselves. So if I can't do the same for myself, I think I'm ultimately not a failure, but I think I'm not very good at my job if I can't do it for myself. You know, I want to be able to walk the walk and then talk the talk. But I have this kind of innate feel to myself, and gets a little controversial in my opinion, but I have an idea of a man, and I think men have a responsibility to do shit that they don't necessarily want to do, and on my list is being strong and being fit, and that's one of the top things on my list, because if you get that right, in my opinion, almost everything else falls in line.
What do you see as the biggest reasons why strength and fitness are at the top of your list? And I imagine that they should probably be at the top of many people's lists. Not everybody, because we talked about before we got on this call, like how boring would it be if everybody was the same? Damn straight. Men need to be men again in the chat. Awesome. Thank you, Oleg. But yeah, like why strength? Why fitness? Like, so why is that
when
number
I say
one?
Strength, it doesn't necessarily mean fitness. It's just how it's the gateway for me. So when I say strength, I mean strength in relationships, strength, physical strength, strength emotionally, and that all ties together. Because I think that you learn that through strength training, unless you have some sort of mentor, or you're doing breath work, or you're doing deep work with like a therapist, something like that. But I think the lowest hanging fruit is go move your body, use your muscles, and it'll come with it. So strength is important because I think it's all connected, right? Like we talk about the body, and you're like, oh, something that hurts your ankle could be because of your upper neck. Like, so everything's connected. I think strength is all kind of one unit as well. So I think that if you raise your physical strength to some extent, it'll kind of lagging indicator your mental strength, right? I see this all the time with clients who may have gone through or going through divorces, right? They're emotionally just plummeted. They don't want this divorce. They're afraid it's going to lose they're losing their entire life. But for that 1 to 3 hours a week that they come through, and we just get primal, we move some weights, we release all these things, it gives you a different focus, and it builds your self-confidence in a different way. And I've had multiple clients throughout my time say that they don't know that they would have gotten through their divorces or tough times without me, which is silly to me because I'm like, oh, let's move weights. But there's something deeper to it that gets people through hard times.
Yeah, you know, the body's a spider web, like you said, ankle, shoulder. When you pull on one strand, it affects the entire web. And so that can relate to your ankle and your shoulder, but that can also relate to the strength that you're talking about. And I like to think about the etymology of words. And for me, strength is overcoming gravity or overcoming force. And if you can overcome gravity physically, that's what strength is, where you put more weight on your back so that you can get more strength to overcome gravity. Should you need to, Batman reference here, bench press a beam that fell down on you while your Bruce Wayne Manor was on fire. That strength, that ability to overcome, then trickles down mentally. You can overcome bigger and bigger challenges, bigger and bigger weights mentally, but also emotionally in other areas too.
And this goes back to the whole concept of men being men again, is like, I think if you're not strong physically, it takes a toll on your mental strength, you know. And I'm not thinking that I do think this, but it's not physically. I don't think every man needs to be ready to necessarily put their family on their back and carry them away or to safety, right, away from it, trouble. But like, if you have the ability to, you're going to feel a lot better in your life, right? And you may never need to use that skill or use that strength, but if you have that ability, it's going to leach into every other aspect of your life.
Yeah, and to your point, strength is relative for everybody. You might be able to Bruce Wayne it and bench press the beam from Wayne Manor off your chest, or like throw your whole family on your back and like march them around. But you also mentioned, you've worked with clients with cerebral palsy. What did that strength look like for them? Because that's a totally different condition and a totally different experience that you have in your body.
For example, clients that have had cerebral palsy, it's little things like walking straighter. Walking doesn't become as taxing, which builds confidence in life. It builds confidence to be able to be self-sufficient. They feel less tired a lot of the times if they just are walking more efficiently. That gentleman that was close to 400 pounds, I had him at one point pushing a prowler from the low point, and he looked up to me after his set and he goes, "Man, you make me do the craziest things that I never thought were possible, but guess what? But like at home, I carried the laundry basket." I had a client one time who had a history of strokes and knee replacements. And I remember, I'll never forget the day he came to me one time for our next session, all excited. He's like, Dan, guess what? And I was like, what's up? He goes, I vacuumed the living room. And I was like, great. And he goes, no, you don't understand. My back doesn't hurt. And so like, it's things like that. Like this gentleman thought that he would never be able to vacuum his living room again without pain. He never thought it would be possible to live pain-free vacuuming. And through strength training, his life is easier. He's done something that he thought was impossible, and it's propelled his life physically and mentally. Yes,
it changed his story, and it's to those points specifically. Like you, maybe how much do you deadlift before you stopped training this past month?
Mid to high fives.
Whatever, mid to high 500 pounds. That you may deadlift 500 pounds, you may not. But whether you're doing that or you're somebody with a defining condition. I was working with a client who had muscular dystrophy, and like the doctors told him his whole life, well, there's nothing you can do about it. There's just nothing you can do. Like, you're not going to be able to feel your feet. You'll need these braces forever. And after 6 weeks of working together, he was like, I got out of the shower without support. And I'm like, similar to your point, like, cool. But it's like, no, you don't understand. I've never felt this stable and like this solid before. And, strength is relative for everyone within their situation. Just going to the gym or just at home, like learning to move your body, not only gives you the strength, but what comes with that, to your point, is the confidence. Like, oh, because I could overcome this thing that was kind of scary at the gym, now I can overcome the bigger things in my life. And that brings you to what you talked about at the very beginning, that false evidence appearing real, that fear, and being able to take on bigger and bigger things that you might be a little bit afraid of. And all of a sudden, like people in your life are changing. I think it's Jordan Peterson that says that each of us we're connected to about 1,000 people through our relationships, our physical relationships. You and I live down the block from each other, but also through Instagram, social media. And if every person's connected to 1,000 people, you're only a few steps out from affecting 1 million people with little things that you think are so insignificant. It's bigger than your family. Yeah, man. And the other thing that came up for me is you were talking about starting your workout program, but like getting the first workout in today, and how it was overcoming the inertia. And I get a ton of mental chatter whenever I'm about to do something that's really difficult. Do you get that too?
No, I know that when me and you used to compete together, we used to lift together, we would get the nervous peas.
Yeah.
Right? Like.
Yeah. Sometimes you get the nervous peas.
Something that's really hard, I get real, like, I gotta pee all the time. But yeah. No, I think for me that
like a dog.
And this is gonna sound, because I don't feel like I've done super hard stuff necessarily, but I think I've challenged myself enough that like it's another challenge. You know, it doesn't necessarily freak me out.
Yeah, Oleg in the chat gets nervous poops too. That's a really common one. But yeah, I think at the beginning, yeah, it's really common to get a lot of mental chatter that's like, don't go work out. You can hang out and swipe on Instagram. You can go on TikTok. Like, this is going to feel far better for us. But as you continue to steer into that thing that's uncomfortable, that mental chatter actually starts to quiet down more. And when you're faced with other challenges in the future, you either have less mental chatter or you just know how to get out in front of it. Like, I will cold shower. You're a cold therapy guy as well. And for a long time, there used to be so much mental chatter and so much urge to like, go look at your phone, go on Instagram right now, that sometimes I'd be 10 minutes later and be like, I haven't gotten in yet. And now I try to like get out ahead of the voices. I'm like, let me just rush to do this thing before they start. Like, before I can think about rolling over and getting back in or staying in bed because I'm tired, let me just get up. Before I can think about picking up my phone and I'm like, I wonder what's going on Instagram. I just get in the ice bath.
That's something I try to
just
do that also has gotten me in trouble with a lot of things. That's something I learned from Johnny Knoxville. For those of us who know who that is, it's don't think about it, just do it. Which you need to be careful sometimes, but I think more often than not, that ends up being good.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of discernment you have to make with that. But when it comes to things that like are going to be better for your health in the long run, it's like just go. Cool, the voices are here. Go, run faster than them. Well, man, anything else coming up for you? All right. So we'll move towards wrapping this thing up. My question for you is, what's one unusual habit or absurd thing in your life that you love? And like, you already have absurd things. You introduced me to Magic Gathering. I'm endlessly grateful for that. Which maybe it's not absurd. It's not absurd, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's not unusual either. But what's your unusual habit, absurd thing that you do within your life?
I feel like I have a lot, but they're not absurd to me. You know, like I play very nerdy card games pretty much weekly. I'm always trying to find different things and create different ways that I can better myself at home. Like, I'm on this big kick of building my own ice bath now, which I should make one for you as well. Like self-sustaining. Usually I just jump in a tub filled with ice or take a cold shower, but I'm looking to make my own. Maybe this is controversial, but I carry a gun everywhere I go. That's very bizarre for some people, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I also carry a mouse track everywhere I go.
Yeah, one of my favorite things has been working out at your gym, and like you were doing cardio on the Stairmaster, and like you were working on gun skills. What? You're like, are you cool if I have the firearm out? And I was like, yeah, go. And you were just like working on stuff. Awesome. All right, man. Well, we can close this thing up. Thanks for being here. Where can we find out more about what you're doing?
The best way to find me is at my house. Please don't shut up. No, I'm Instagram is Pulverdan, Pulverdan, half of my last name, part of my first name. Pretty much everything there. I mean, if you have questions, I'm horrible at posting, but I'm always doing something.
How do people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about strength or like snowboarding, overcoming fears, stuff like that? Like, to bring in a story, I've been working with a client that just lost over 100 pounds the past year, and she was like, I really want to snowboard. And I was like, go talk to Dan. Dan's the dude.
That was awesome.
And Dan got her on the hill. So where do people find you if they want to overcome some fears, whether that's strength or something else? How do they get a hold of you?
Fine. I strength train at Lifetime Fitness in Schaumburg right now as well. Or just, if you're not an Instagram or a local, ask Rob and he'll give you my phone number. So
Yeah, I'll hook you up. Shoot Dan a DM. If that doesn't work, let me know.
yeah,
All right, dude. Well, thanks for hanging out. It was awesome. We'll chat more in the future and overcome your fear by practicing strength in your physical body so that it translates to real life. Be the thing within yourself. Do the thing so that you have the thing. Discipline equals motivation. You can do it anywhere, regardless of where you're at. This has been Masculinity Rising number 7. This, again, is value for value. This is part of my 8-week project. So if you're like, hey, this was really cool, make sure you drop in the comments. You let me know. You give me some likes. You share this thing, because that's how I know that you're like, hey, I got something out of this that was really valuable. And then I'll keep doing them. If you don't think it was valuable, then I don't want to do them, because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time either. I'd rather go play with my son. But I want to make sure I'm bringing value to you. And that's it. Thanks for being here. And everybody have an amazing day. Dan, thanks for being with us. Peace.